Everyone, we're in January 2020, and we're about a week and a half after the White Settlement church shooting in Texas. We're roughly 2.5 weeks after a synagogue shooting in New York City. Now, typically when these faith-based organizations are attacked, I get many inquiries. Faith-based organizations want to professionalize and legalize their security force, and they just don't know how to do it. Or they want some type of professional consulting. Well, I am not your professional consultant. I'm not your attorney. And I do not work for the Bureau of Security Investigative Services, which is the executive branch of the Department of Justice for California. They are the ones who regulate California-based private security companies and California-based proprietary security officer employers. So California licenses two entities or two organizations. The first one is a proprietary security officer employer license. And if you are a security officer employer in the state of California, you have private security guards, just one, and they wear a uniform or some type of uniform that is consistent with how other security officers dress in the state of California. And if you are an individual, limited liability company, a partnership, or a corporation, then you need a proprietary security officer employer license. Now, with faith-based organizations, you get a lot of volunteers. Whether those volunteers are employers or they're actually considered an employer for a volunteer, that's a gray area. There's some things that a church does to compensate their volunteers. Maybe food that's provided to the employee for providing maybe some type of security service. If there's some type of benefit, it doesn't always have to be financial. Then there's always that gray area where that the faith organization is an employer. Okay. Now, for a private patrol operator license, you generally need one when you start contracting to different employers. So if you are protecting one faith-based organization, you don't necessarily belong to the organization, you're just contracting services, and then there's another one and another one, then you generally need that private patrol operator license. We're going to call it the PPO license. Even with just one employer, if you contract security services, you need that license. So the organizations that I usually consult with, they're either synagogues or Christian-based organizations, usually. And for years, synagogues in Israel, they know how to protect themselves really good. You got to imagine that their country, Israel, is surrounded by a sea of countries that don't like them. Whether you like the Jewish people or not, that has nothing to do with this video I'm creating. This video is for any organization that wants to professionalize their security force. Okay, once in a while I will get somebody from a mosque that wants to form that wants to professionalize their security force and legalize it, but that's more rare. Okay, so I'm not just picking and choosing a faith-based organization because of my preference. I'm just doing that because those are the clients that are contacting me. Okay. All right. So let's move on. There's faith-based organizations out there who have concealed weapon permit holders who work as private security in the organization. They attend the organization services, but they sit in the crowd, so to speak, and they're there to protect anyone who needs to be protected from active shooters or from horrible people. You do not need a proprietary security officer license or proprietary employer license for that. You don't need a PPO license for that as well. Okay. Once you give that person a uniform, or you start compensating them for their service, providing armed protection, then we have a totally different spectrum here. Once you start compensating them or putting them in a uniform, you're going to need the PPO license. See, a proprietary security officer license does not allow you or your security guard force to carry a firearm. Only the private patrol operator license allows you to do that. Some of you might be considering a penal code. There's a California penal code that does say that the owner of a business or nonprofit organization and his or her agents are allowed to have a firearm on premises. Now, whether that person can have it on the person, that's a gray area. It doesn't specify you can have it on your person. Now, many might argue, well, this is private property. Like, why do I have to, have some sort of a license, or why is it against the law to have even an exposed firearm or concealed weapon permit on the faith-based organization premise if it's private property? The problem is the penal code writes that you can't carry a loaded or unloaded firearm in a public place. And yes, a faith-based organization property might not be a public place, but the California appellate courts have ruled that when the owner or their agents take steps to exclude people from the public through the use of some type of physical barrier, maybe gates, walls, and the activity from inside is blocked off from the outside, then that is not considered a public place. It's considered more of private property, and you can carry what you want. The problem is many faith-based organizations, they have the open parking lot, and because of that, or the throwaways or common areas, they're not blocked by any barriers. You're going to have a situation where a public place is created because of the lack of the barriers.